Good morning, everyone. It's again Friday. It's Fireside Friday chat here from T360. It's Stefan Swanepoel coming in from Hawaii, Jack from Austin, and we also have two very good friends also from Texas joining us today. We have Josh and Ellen, both of them very senior executives in the highest leadership positions you can think of at Keller Williams. And thank you very much for your time today, Friday, ladies and gents.
Fun to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
Awesome. Jack, I think I'm going to give it to you because you actually used to work for Keller before the previous job, which was the job before the previous job, before I snatched you away because you were so valuable and you're now a very, very, very critical element for T360 success. But you actually have a soft spot for Keller. You used to work there.
Yeah, I really do. I entered the industry through working for Keller Williams corporate, and I remember going through the very rigorous hiring process that Gary takes everybody through, and I see some nodding heads.
Everybody has changed, Jack.
Yeah, I know, it's very rigorous. And then I had to go hire a bunch of people through that process, which is
very purposeful. It's a very purposeful process.
Very purposeful. So I owe a huge debt of gratitude to Gary and the executive team at that time for introducing me to the industry. And I do have a soft spot. I think it's a wonderful company, has done some incredible things, and I post on Facebook. It's a real success story. I was born and raised in Austin, Texas, and it's a hometown success story, just like Whole Foods or Dell. And it's an international brand, big brand, very important company. But I remember when it was Keller Who and less than 10,000 agents, and was really kind of a regional Oklahoma, Texas sort of little franchise company. So it's quite a privilege to watch it to start and then to watch it grow.
Those characteristics, those skill set, Josh and Ellen, I can tell you that he brought them over to T360 too. You should see our hiring process, and then he's even hired some other people that also used to work at Keller at some stage. So we have more than our fair dash of people there.
We have a few alumni. We have a few alumni here, and I just think it's. Keller Williams and Gary Keller in particular have such a strategic and purposeful way of moving in the industry that I think if you came out of that system, you kind of never leave it really, in terms of the way that you think about how the real estate business works and how the industry operates and how to operate strategically. So just a great background.
So we also have those 3-7-2-1 kind of things going on, right? I mean, so we're into numbers. But anyways, you guys, tell us, are both of you and your family and your loved ones and the ones around you all healthy and good?
Yeah, on my side, we were pretty quick to deciding to when we saw what was happening in Wuhan, we started to bring attention to it. And actually, Gary, to his credit, very early on, I want to say like late January, maybe super early February, instructed Ellen and I to continue monitoring what was happening international and actually telling us, there's a recession of some sort coming. There's going to be some setback of some sort coming financially, and there's going to be operational changes. So we were pretty aggressive in the beginning to do that, and for that, to my knowledge, our employee base and my personal families and our employees' families have been relatively unimpacted, as we've all been busy at work in quarantine life with the rest of America. But we've been doing that for a very long time, it feels now, going back to late February, early March.
Yeah, it's only been about 10,000 days total, right?
Exactly.
The march that will not end.
Exactly. No, but we're all healthy. We're lucky, as Josh said, that we called it pretty early. I think Josh and I were texting at 5 a.m. that Friday the 13th, ironically, and we're like, we got to send our people home. Like, this is the right thing to do. And the transition has been remarkable, truly.
One of the things that have impressed me, or has impressed me at Keller immensely, which I was emotional, but I thought it was very cool, is your Red Day, of course, which comes from Mo and her vision and contribution. I know somebody else came up with the idea, but the celebration of the day in which you all contribute on her birthday, that's usually in May. Isn't that around about this time? What did you guys do this year?
Oh, we pivoted, as we are with everything. We pivoted Red Day completely, to still serve, but serve safely and social distance. And there was a lot of question, right? We got inundated. Are you going to do Red Day? How are we going to do Red Day? And I don't think it was ever a question that now it was more important than ever. And Red Day is a day we go out and serve our communities. And this year was so unique in that every community was facing kind of the same challenges. And so we were able to go out, hundreds of offices, thousands of associates around the world, and people caravanned past hospitals and first responders. They wrote love letters. I mean, we just wrapped our arms around our communities the best we could from a safe social distance, and gave a lot of air hugs and blew a lot of kisses, and got out there. And it was, yeah.
Well, and one of the key parts about Red Day and why it's been such a wonderful thing for us is nothing embodies our culture, in my opinion, more than that day, when across multiple countries, and when you have anytime you have more than 100,000 humans all doing one thing at the same time, that's a powerful moment. And so when I think, when you look at just because everyone knows about our agent count, but there's more than just our agent count. Behind those agents, there's employees and there's operational staff and there's all these types of people. And so you're upwards in the close to, and they bring in their families. So you're talking probably closer to 200,000 human beings across multiple countries, all stopping work one day and all deciding to give back and through charity and through donations, through effort, through love, through kindness, back into their communities where they live. And it's such a powerful moment for us because just that one day and that focus, it's a really powerful moment. And so one of my favorite stories about happened from this Red Day is, as we all know, the frontline responders are they're independent of what you think and where you fall in analyzing, should we go back now? Should we continue quarantining? Independent of that, I think we can all agree that the frontline people, the EMT responders, the nurses, the medical staff, they're really unsung heroes right now. And so there was a lot of our market centers who made donations, ordered in fun foods, as Ellen said, this gratitude, sent pictures of the families quarantining, sitting and saying, thank you for taking care of the people so that we can all continue moving forward. And I got pictures, literally hundreds and hundreds of pictures of these hospitals posting the love and kindness and the gratitude all over their walls around these people, these strangers to them, thinking about them, praying for them, loving on them, caring for them, thanking them. And to me, that was a pretty powerful moment for me personally as a human.
Absolutely. It's an incredibly positive feeling. I see Michael writes here quickly on the chat box from Palm Beach, from KW Palm Beach. He says, we raised money, collected food for pets, and collected sorted food and distributed to people in our community. So, I think every time, that's been one of the cool things that Jack and I have seen. We've now interviewed a bunch of leaders in our industry from different companies, and Keller is known for its family and its culture. And I do think you guys do exceptional, but it was encouraging to see that almost all of the big brands, right? All of the industry leaders across multiple companies, it doesn't really matter which company you're from. They actually, Jack and I both felt we could sense a stepping up, right, Jack? I mean, the people stepped up. And of course, the first step was to take care of your personal family and loved ones. And then it was, your office, and then it was maybe your company or your brand. And then it was the bigger extended family. And then at some stage you felt that, it's still actually going fairly well with us all, right? These are first world problems. I mean, it's not a good time, but it's still going well. We're not in, 1600 times, the year 1600, we're all sitting with Netflix and home delivery and pizza delivery. I mean, so it's still actually going well. We don't really have anything to really complain about. And then to go out and to go help those other people that really do need the help. And almost every brand has done something. Very cool. Jack, comment?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a collective shared experience that I think will shape, the real estate community at large, because we've seen so many people in real estate giving back to their community, serving as, making sure that food gets to people that are stuck at home or the elderly that can't help themselves easily through this time. So I think it will be a silver lining that I think this has been a community building experience throughout the entire.
Common enemies unite the troops better than anyone, right? And when COVID shows up and the industry can rally around defeating the biggest headwind to an agent. And the only thing I would say, Stefan, is I do agree that there's a lot of first world problems here, but there's also real challenges, I think, with the unemployment issue that's rising. And I think that there's a lot of agents who things were on a great ride, and they woke up one day and their ability to pay their bills and their ability to send their kids to college and their ability to hit that savings marks and their ability to take that, these life goals, these life plans got scarier, overnight. And so, and I think that makes the commitment and the investment that not only KW, to your point, but every brand pours back into the larger community, and given, faced with those challenges and those uncertainties, makes the contribution even more powerful, to when
So here's a curve question for you. Here's a curve question. Yeah. You said unemployment, and I agree with you. There's lots. Well, I think we've heard 36 million, and then maybe 6 million or so have been able to get some work back from Amazon. So maybe 30 million. Doesn't matter. Ballpark, as you said, numbers huge, right? Big, right? So the real estate career has low barriers to entry, and people tend to come to our industry in good times. Will they now also come to us in bad times? Do we think we're going to get a surge of maybe new people coming into our industry this year?
Potentially, it would be unique. So when we go back and we look back and we model and look in history around, what drives the agent population, and the answer that historically, for as long as we've gone back and looked at this, has been around the available commission the industry creates. And so typically what happens is the available commission continues growing. And as we've been in kind of what we call the golden era of real estate, which has just been growth, amazing. As the available commission grows in the industry, the idea or the concept that I can do just 2 or 3 or 4 deals and make this much money becomes very lucrative or attractive to someone who may be in a different life position or grinding out at work. And that becomes very attractive, and the lure happens. And so we've seen traditionally the number one driver, the early indicator of agents joining the industry has been available commission. So potentially, yeah, Stefan, I do think the headwind to that is going to be the reduction in listing inventory we see, and if there's anything with prices that ends up happening in Q3 or Q4.
Agreed, but I'm going to give you a twist to that.
Sure.
That you said correctly that if you're not earning a lot of money in this job, you might come to this job because it might be a growing pool in commission. At the moment, this hand here might have no income. There might be zero. So almost anything, even if the pool on this side is not growing, even if I can just do one deal, a couple of $100,000 deal, and I can get a 3% commission on something, and maybe I'm walking away with a couple of grand or 10 grand or whatever, that might be better than no job at all.
Totally fair. I think a lot of that's going to be dependent. If you remember, the jobs being impacted now are service industry, and mainly in the service industry are very much they're more nomadic in their careers, and with the subsidies happening at the federal government, a lot of I was reading a report recently that the median and average unemployment insurance for the people laid off is greater than 100% of what they were making before. So I don't think there's market pressure right now. That's zero.
No, not 100%. No.
I actually think the opposite. I think what you could see is, I know there's been a lot of speculation that with a market recession that we'd see agents leaving the real estate. I think because of the way this showed up, I think we could see the opposite of that, which is what would typically you would see as if available commission goes down, agents would leave the industry. But there's no jobs for them to lead to, which is unique because this isn't just happening in real estate like it did in 2008. And so I think there's nowhere to run to out of the industry. So I think you're going to see agents staying longer with less production than you would have traditionally in previous recessions. But I think with the subsidy for the federal government's doing, I'm personally not. I don't think you're going to see this flood of the service industry that's been laid off moving to real estate, because I think, to be honest with you, those was nomadic to start with, and they're making more money now based off the surveys and the papers I'm reading. Just a thought, though.
No, that's the sound logic. I like logic. That's the sound logic. Ellen, you're very involved and very knowledgeable about the higher end of the market. We haven't really discussed the higher end on any one of our calls, Jack. So now we have somebody that might be able to give us a little bit of insight into, I don't know, high end. I don't know, any insights, people, movement, prices, volume, any stats that you may share?
It's interesting you asked that. Yesterday we had a luxury lab with some of our top producers across the country, and we were talking about strategy and different things going forward. And we've been really focused on plugging into them to see what's going on. And there hasn't been a huge price pressure, right? And I think we've seen that in a lot of markets that we're already doing well, that prices aren't going down dramatically, but just the velocity of the business that's being done and the time it's being done in has slowed quite a bit, right? So whether or not that'll hold, and then also a lot of people looking for a second home that is not in a city where they don't want to get in an elevator every day. And so you find people who are looking to move out to a second home, or if they already have a second home, they've decamped there, right? And maybe shopping for real estate. You may be one of those people, Stefan.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's a slowing down of the velocity. It's not a price pressure, is what we're hearing from our top agents right now. And then that move, I think there will be some move to areas. We were talking to one of our top agents in Palm Springs yesterday that Arizona is doing some marketing to the high end of the market to say, come to the desert, that's open, because so much of what's happening in California is, in lockdown. So we may start to see some migration patterns dependent on how states handle this, right? And where people can go, where they want to go invest their dollars.
Yeah, my second home definitely does now feel like my first home because I've been so long here. Jack, I know that Jack on one of our previous calls really came up with the interesting question whether we thought, and maybe I shouldn't phrase it, Jack could phrase it. It was something that Jack was along the lines of, maybe are the buying habits or the searching habits of buyers changing slightly, where they might be looking for a study or a bigger piece of land or something out of town. So do we think there are any longer lasting habitual or changes amongst buyers, searchers?
We launched our consumer app, and I won't pitch or hype our stuff out. We've seen some good success from that, and we actually and the reason I only say that is because we've gotten and I think we posted this recently, but over 90 million property searches just in the last 6 to 8 weeks when we launched the consumer. So we have a lot of data that we can watch, and what we actually see, the way that I frame that question, Stefan, and I think that's exactly right. The search behavior isn't changing. The search criteria is changing, and what people are still looking for and how they're looking and how they're engaging in the process is the same. It's the criteria and the lens in which they're looking through it. So I would say pre-COVID, location, 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 as always. I think post-COVID, it's location, location, and can I be quarantined in here? I think there's a
what if I got stuck here?
That's right. There's a new lens people are looking at. Yeah. And then they're saying, how much do I really love being in my home if I have to be in my home? And I think that some things that were nice to haves are becoming must-haves. And I think that, but how they're evaluating that criteria, I think is saying. I think that the lens and perspective of that criteria is what people are having different conversations about.
So I like that we can make that a new change there, Jack. Location, quarantined location.
I think if you spent a couple of months in a place full time, like you're living everything, life, work, exercise, the whole thing, that it changes your perspective on your home, where now you just look at it differently because you've tried to live every facet of your life within it. And I already know, we moved last year in June, and I'm so thankful that we did, because we got a big, beautiful backyard. We're right on a green belt. We have all the kids have their own rooms. I have, beautiful.
Why are you rubbing it in, Jack? That's not nice. That's not nice at all. That's not nice.
If we had not moved, my children to your house.
Yeah, no, it's great. I would love to have them over in a plastic bubble. So, but if we had not moved, I can tell you absolutely all of our criteria would have been different. Just think, my wife and I have replayed this conversation, say, imagine we went through the lockdown at the place we lived at before, which was fine. It was nothing wrong with it. We didn't dislike it at all. But we had that conversation. Yeah, that would not have been a good time. We're so glad we did move. And I think a lot of people are revisiting that conversation now to say, maybe I've shifted. Maybe I want some place that's a little bit closer to the outdoors, or I want a little bit more space. So
here's a question to both Ellen and Josh. you said, and we know that the Keller has a very, very large team family, and you mentioned a number 100,000, which I know is just a round number which you threw out. We don't have to discuss the details of the number, but it doesn't matter. It's the largest in the industry. We know that, and
I think we're about like 159,000 some change. So we'll call it 160,000 is roughly where we're at.
Enormous. I mean, enormous. And I know that many times people have said to me, you know, size doesn't matter. It's not the most important number, but size does matter. I mean, size in every world allows you to do things that you cannot do when you're smaller. Whether you have a bigger budget, a bigger turnover, a bigger sales volume, a bigger sales force, you know, more country, more space.
Economies of scale is a real thing.
Yes, sure. Economies of scale play a role. But one of the things that you make me so envious when you say things that you have, like you said, you had 90 million visits in the last 8 weeks, and I think, oh, look at all the stats and numbers he has. I wonder if he's going to willing to share some of those stats with me. So what if you guys, both of you individually, collectively, what have you heard or learned from your team in the last, doesn't matter, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks, that you think, wow, that's it. That's a shift. That's pretty cool. That's not obvious. I mean, don't just tell me that they're Zooming. We know they're Zooming, right? That's so obvious. Don't tell me that they've now learned to use DocuSign, right? We get that.
So you're talking my language now. Now you're talking my language. So I'll go first, and then Ellen.
Tell me some cool stuff.
Yeah. So actually, before I get into this, because now I will geek out with you on some data, right? We all will. But I think it's important for anyone who's watching this and who may not have been on the journey with KW, which I assume is most people, because I don't go on the journey of other brands. But the whole point, the reason we started this whole, and I know Gary created a lot of energy when he said we're going to become a technology company, and all we meant by that was we wanted to become a tech-enabled franchise, because we were not a tech-enabled franchise before. We were using a bunch of different systems that didn't talk to each other, and the way I framed it was we were data rich but insight poor, which led to our agents being data rich and insight poor. And we've been on this mission for multiple years now to creating a platform, said differently, a set of operating systems that the agent, the consumers connect together, so that we can all become learn the insights to create better experiences. We can create better experiences for agents create better experience for consumers. To answer these exact pointed questions that you're asking, Stefan, which is, okay, the world moved, what actually happened, what actually matters, and what's actually going to be the future, and so we can forecast that. So that being said, one of the most interesting things we've seen is, and so I'll tell you what we're seeing, and then like most people, I'm sure you guys go through this, once you see an interesting fact, you then have to go do the hard work and unpack that and understand why that fact is true to get derive the insight. So the fact was, we were seeing record low cost per lead acquisition on Facebook. And we were like, okay, wait, there's a global pandemic. And at this time, actually, and Zillow reported the same thing, across our search experience and everyone's search experience, search traffic went down. Cost per lead acquisition went down too. So less people driving cheaper leads, that didn't make any sense to us. So, but this is the scale we're talking about. We've, inside of Command, our operating system, we give agents, they can, for no charge, do advertising on Facebook. And we use our data and AI to help them make ad decisions using our economies of scale and data. So we place all these ads, and agents get great value of that. So to show you the scale, we're talking over $1 million spent in a 3 or 4 month period. I forget the exact months. You're talking over 40,000 agents. So you're not talking a small sample set here. We're talking a large sample set. And we were seeing some of the lowest cost per lead, like down to 50 cents, 30 cents for leads.
Oh, nice.
And really incredible pricing.
Yeah. So we dove into that. Over the lifespan of Command Facebook program we've generated, I think, over 1 million leads for just over like $1.5 million, something like that. So we're averaging $1.50 a lead in that ballpark. And this even dripped even lower. And that makes sense, right? If you got economies of scale, you got a partnership with Facebook, and you can do real ad targeting and some AI multivariate tests, you're going to get really good prices. But we saw it drop really low. And so we looked into that. Here's what ended up happening. And here's my 2 cents for anyone listening. What did Zillow announce they were doing? Stefan, Jack, pop quiz. What did Zillow and Realtor announce they were doing? What were they freezing? One of the first things they were freezing to mitigate cost expenditures.
Yeah, they stopped their iBuyer program.
Ad spend.
ad spend. Realtor, Zillow, everyone stopped their ad spend. So what happened is, and this makes sense now, all the competition froze their ad spend. Yeah. What happened to all the Americans who went home? What did they go log into?
On Facebook.
Yeah, they're on Facebook.
So supply of consumers on Facebook went record high. The demand went record low, which allowed agents for the first time ever to be able to parlay their Starbucks latte budget of $5 a day, generates them on average with our program 5 to 6 leads a day. And again, we all know that the conversion rate of a Facebook lead is 90 to 120 days, but the conversion rate still maintaining the exact. So we in our system we can track a lead all the way to closed transaction GCI now, and so we see that those leads are converting from appointment to contract written to close the exact same ratio as every other lead, and so. So that's a phenomenon we saw that's still persistent today. There's more people on social media. There's less competition. So the acquisition cost is at all-time lows. And I think that the agents who are taking advantage of that are going to be building their sales pipelines to grow in that recovery. And so we're spending a lot of energy helping our agents learn how to master that and build those, retention and follow back campaigns and all types of things. But that was an interesting insight we saw.
That does follow on a long-term philosophy that we've all heard, that right, you're going against the stream. When everybody runs away, you should be running towards it, right?
Yes.
So when everybody's selling stock market, you should probably be thinking about potentially investing in the stock market.
That's exactly right. So we saw the phenomenon.
Yeah, don't flow with the masses. Have you any feeling of statistics with regard to what percentage or what number of those have converted to sales, or do you think will convert to sales? How does the million leads which you think you secured or you did secure?
We see that. We definitively see they clicked on our ad and they went into the CRM of an agent.
How many sales do you think that would roughly end up being?
So I want to be super cautious because I can't claim any credit for a conversion of those leads. That's all the hard work of our agent population.
Yep.
And so I don't want at all attrition success metrics to KWI or Command. But what we have seen is when we look at the lead source, that when we generate them, or they get entered in manually by the agent from other sources or through an API coming from Zillow or these other ones, the conversion rate over a 12-month period is exactly the same within a margin of error. So when you take out standard deviation and margin of error. Now, that being said, certain leads will convert faster. So in what we're seeing, it's a frequency or it's the length until conversion that's the independent variable that changes. So for instance, if you get a Zillow lead over a time period, that converts the exact same amount as a lead from Facebook. The difference is the Zillow lead might convert in 30 days. The Facebook lead might convert in 3 months or 4 months on average. Does that answer your question, Stefan? The conversion rate doesn't change.
I don't think it answers it. I probably need another 200 days for you and me to chat about this to get to the bottom of it. But we'll take it for today.
The conversion rate doesn't. Sorry, the conversion rate.
And it's like 1%. It's a typical conversion from I mean, we've seen as high as 3.5% and 4% from teams that really, really work their leads tightly. But 1% would be a conservative number. Even 0.5% would be.
So we look at it, and maybe we look at it wrong, which is, or not wrong, but wrong to answer this question. We don't ask the question. We can see every agent's conversion rate and every cohort's conversion rate, both at the micro and macro level. And then we ask, how does this lead source, what's the delta between this new lead source versus what they were already doing?
So you're saying it's very comparable, it's very similar.
And the reason you have to do it that way is because not all agents or teams are the same.
Yeah, sure.
And so if you look at it from a macro level, you're going to get blended results, in my opinion, because certain teams that might be leaning into the Facebook are better at converting Facebook. So the way to do this to be statistically more relevant would be, in my opinion, the way we look at this, what is their average conversion rate? And then how does this lead source for that agent, and what's that delta? And then what's the aggregate delta across our ecosystem? And we're not seeing that change. The only thing that's changing is the duration to convert.
And Ellen, do you think that applies to the higher end as well, or does the online Facebook stuff apply a little bit more middle of the road?
That's a hard question to answer. I think we have agents who are testing that through our system now and are starting to get into that. I think that there's a draw to Facebook across all demographics, and we can start to see that. But I haven't heard a lot of our agents, or at least the ones we've been talking to, pouring into that. Josh, have you seen that in any of the data that you've looked at?
So the way that I would answer that is that I think the generating the leads is going to be relatively the same, to be honest with you. The difference between a $400,000 property and $1 million property, and someone clicking an ad to say I want more information, you're going to see a little bit of a drop off for sure. And that's just with all online lead gen. The more sophisticated the buyer, the less likely they are to engage with digital marketing. I think where you're really going to see the data show up there, Stefan, and again to Ellen's point, we don't have a luxury sector in how we do campaigns, and luxury is defined very differently in every market, as you know. So we don't have definitive data here. So you're kind of talking about our opinions and conversations. I think the number one thing we all know, though, is independent of how you generate the lead, the luxury lead will take 4 or 5 times the amount of energy and effort to convert versus more of you would call your standard cohort buyer. And I think that independent of how you acquire that, whether it be Facebook or your Sphere or referral or Zillow or however you're buying those leads or acquiring those leads, I think the biggest independent variable with the luxury buyer is the amount of energy and effort is to convert them.
Ellen, do you still have some, I know at one stage you had some international management in KW. Are you still involved with that, or are you now only involved with the luxury side, or where's the scope of your work cover?
I did a lot of work with KW Worldwide, and I moved kind of back to the US and Canada side of the business and to partner with Josh in overseeing operations here. So I get to talk to my friends in Worldwide and our leadership team there a lot, and they're dear to me, but just from afar. And we're always collaborating, right? Yeah. We're always collaborating.
Yeah. Ellen's massively valuable. Make no mistake about it. So everyone in the organization, when there's a tough question around whether the US, Canada, or in any of the other countries we're in, Ellen's very plugged in for sure.
No, I was only asking from the point of view that every country in the world is so unique. I mean, I've lived in 4 different countries, and I've been to about 54 of them, but they're so uniquely different. And if you don't have a contact or a relationship or a foot in the door with those, you don't really know what's happening in those countries, right? They all deal with their own circumstances. And I was just wondering if you had some stories from abroad that was shareable, but I know that they're different. Any exposure from Canada that we could share with the people on the call? Our neighbor to the north?
So Ellen, I don't know, do you have any, I know you work close to Worldwide. Are there anything you're seeing there in any of the countries as they're dealing with COVID and how they're going through the recovery?
No, I think it's when we talk about low barriers to entry in the real estate profession in general in the U.S., that is it is high compared to the barrier to entry, right, in other countries. So you're talking about people moving very fluidly in and out of a career in real estate. And so I think there will be our offices and leaders, and there are countries, right, that have had more of this, Italy and Spain, and have had more of an impact in COVID. And I think they're on a tighter lockdown, and the velocity of those markets has slowed down a great deal. And then there are other places that are more similar to the US. But again, agents moving in and out of the market, getting in and out of real estate, that's really where our offices and our regions are focused on right now. And they're in a great position leveraging some of our technology as well to really raise the bar in how real estate is, how lead generation is done, how real estate is transacted, because a lot of our tools now are available to our worldwide partners. And so hopefully that will be the bridge to connect to their clients, help them lead generate, and really sustain during this time. Because it is everybody can be a realtor in some countries if you have a phone and you're willing to go out and lead generate. So being on our platform and being part of our network is a real benefit to them.
As far as Canada, we track the numbers because, and clearly we're actually seeing a relatively same, from our perspective, the same type of, they're very similar to a California and to a Seattle. And one thing that's interesting, what we're doing here, and I would advise any of my partners in the industry to do, so every state is kind of on their own recovery path. And so one of the things that we're doing to get more insights in this, so we actually built in March, we built a report that tracks every COVID case, and the infection rate, the mortality rate, and the recovery rate. And we then use that and we intersect it with all the data we're seeing from Keller Cloud, which is transactions, lead generated, and then the MLS data, which is listens taken, listens sold. And so we actually are able to see how our COVID cases directly or indirectly affecting the real estate economy, if you will. And one thing that's coming from that analysis that we're doing is that, and this is common sense, but it's good to have data to defend this, is the number one thing, and I'm going to avoid having an opinion on this because it's hot, but the number one thing that's driving real estate activity is the local government, I would say. That is the number one influence in the real estate economy, which makes sense. If you're governing things to be open or closed, and the tone of what those things are has intended, unintended consequences, positive, negative, all ways. So what we're actually doing now, and again, we'll share this data to anyone who wants it, you guys or any of our competitors. That again, I think this is the time we all come together, and the smarter we are, the more we navigate. We're actually mapping, we're about a month to 6 weeks behind a lot of other countries in their journey. And a lot of different countries took different paths. Some of them did the herd immunity thing. Some of them did full lockdown. Some of them did massive testing. And you actually see versions of those things happening in the country. Every state has their own kind of path to recovery. So what we're actually tracking is what happened to the real estate economy and the real estate markets in each one of those countries, so that we can then take that forecast model, apply it to the data we're already seeing, and start making some real 90-day projections on, got it. And the reason that this is important is because in Wuhan, where a lot of this started, they were very clear back in February that transaction volume dropped to almost zero, but prices maintained. They only dropped a little bit, and when it came back, prices maintained. It's just how much inventory and velocity is going through. The reason I say that is because that's exactly what we're seeing in some of the recovery states, like New York, who are the most modeled to Wuhan, which are massive lockdown, almost everything just came to a stop. You saw massive depression in transaction, but prices maintained. So what we now know is we can look at other countries going through the recovery, and independent of of all the independent variables of the countries, there is correlation to how the real estate markets economy are doing in those countries to what the states that are following those philosophies are going to see. And so I think we can all get really smart very quickly about what the future holds.
Well, Jack and I both love numbers and stats and facts and logic. So we're going to put up our hand first and say, if you have some of that you can share with us. And if we may distribute, we'll give creditation where it's due, and we'll maybe try and put it together and see how we can maybe package it in such a way that we can maybe share with the industry.
Absolutely.
The time has gone super fast, and we're coming to an end. So I'm going to ask us to wrap up and say, we're looking down the pike for the rest of this year. We're in our country only, just our little 50 states in this world. Looking at Q3, Q4, just give me, I don't know, half a minute or whatever, your feeling and how you see Q3 and Q4 turning out, or maybe Q1 next year, doesn't matter. How do you see it turning out for the rest of the year for your company, for us as an industry, and maybe for us as a country? Just any one of you in any order.
You want to take first and I'll follow up?
Sure. Well, it's hard. The future is blurry, right? I keep saying every day is a little blurry, and the future is blurry because this is such an unprecedented time. But we're all aligned that now's the time to pour into each other, pour into the activities that are going to make a difference. And so we're still seeing agents who are, as Gary likes to say, head down, heart up, and office owners who are out lead generating, who are doing the activities to pour into their business. And so I think we'll see those that stay in the business and keep working continue to power through this, right? People are going to have to move. The basics of real estate, the reasons that people buy and sell don't change just because this unique circumstances on. So while there may be a slower, again, speed of the market, the people who get to work and power through will be the ones who survive in this and thrive in this. And so we're investing all that we have into training our people. We're investing all that we have into making sure that they can have access to online learning, right? I think we're going to see a big transition in our offices and what that looks like when we go back if there is ever a going back and when that will be, to our market centers, to our brokerages. So those are the key investments and the key initiatives that we're working on to make sure we're there to support that when we do get on the other side of this.
Very cool. Very cool.
So the way that I kind of look at this, and we were actually talking about this internally. If you go back to the Spanish influenza in the early 1900s, the cinema was coming of age, and there was a lot of local studios, local theaters, and the Spanish influenza hit, which is their version, and actually much more horrific than, I think it killed millions of people, if I'm not wrong, than what we're experiencing today. So just like today, no one want to go to the cinema, and so the cinema and all the local cinemas struggled, and very few made it to the other side. But the ones that did make it to the other side became what we now know as Warner Brothers and Paramount Studios. And they actually got so big in the 40s and 50s, the government had to break them up. And so to answer your question, I think that there's going to be some companies that don't win. And unfortunately, and I never want to talk about a pandemic in the sense of opportunity or winners and losers, because we're all losers, right? And when there's a global pandemic. But the reality is, in every business situation, in every market, or every market of the moment, as Gary says, there are winners and there are losers. And I think that the companies that can get to the other side of this and will gain more market share. In fact, Keller Williams, I wasn't here, so I can't take any of the credit, but Keller Williams was founded in a recession. And we actually had our largest growth in percentages, and by both just pure percentages and market share during the last housing crisis. And so the companies that can quickly pivot and put a strategic mind on, like Warner Brothers and Paramount back in the early 1900s, will take more market share and have accelerated growth coming out of this. And I do think, though, there'll be some companies that struggle, and I think you'll see bankruptcies. I think you'll see, and I think and I don't want to get into naming, but I think you're seeing it right now just play out in kind of a dirty fashion. Desperate companies will feel desperate, and you'll see them saying and doing and acting in a way that maybe being louder or as is all things. But I think there's going to be some trouble ahead in Q3 and Q4, and there'll be consolidation, as there is in every industry when there's disruption. And when the disruption like this is a health disruption that's affecting everyone, it's massive. This disruption is 10 times worse than a Netflix disruption against Blockbuster. It's just, in fact, and so anytime there's disruption, consolidation occurs, and consolidation happens. And to pull this full circle, this is where being big does matter, and this is where having economy of scale is a leverage, because when you're 12% or whatever the number is of the residential real estate, there's a lot of opportunity there to create leverage to empower agents and our franchisees to continue to make sure that they get their unfair share in that recovery.
Jack, this Josh guy is a deep guy. He's not just a propeller head, right? Wow. Cool. Awesome. Jack, your side?
Yeah, so I really appreciate what you said, Josh. That's a very strategic view, and we saw the same things. I mean, I watched growth happen in broker owners through the last recession who were positioned for it. And we've been coaching broker owners that we work with in our consulting work and some of our programs. I mean, for some of them, we've been saying for several years, the best thing that can happen for you guys is a recession. Because what will happen if you've gotten to a certain place in your business, then it will create opportunities where you can go and fold in companies and bring on agents that maybe aren't good. Because when everything's good, people don't move. They stay, they're happy. They say, I'm happy where I'm at.
Nothing changes in golden
Nothing
years.
changes. But these kinds of, calamities create opportunities. And I feel the same as you, Josh. I don't want to look at what is a terrible catastrophe for some people financially. Absolutely. But it also does create opportunity for
it's
those.
Just reality.
That's reality. If you've been getting ready for it, then it is an opportunity to.
The challenge, I think, will be liquidity. And I think the winners and losers will be those who are well positioned to maintain and maximize liquidity, and those that aren't. And those that might be over leveraged going into this it's just going to be really, really hard. This is just, and again, this is self-serving. I've prefaced that, but being privately held and having a large economies of scale and a large part of the a large organization is absolutely, when liquidity becomes an instrument versus debt or leverage. Because remember, 7 months ago, debt and leverage was the instrument everyone talked about. Like it was free access to money and capital and stock prices and all that. That was the lever. And today it's all about liquidity. And so I think that's just, it's crazy how fast the climate changes.
Well, if you can sharpen your skills during a struggle and you can power through the bad things in life, when we get to normality and we get to the good times, it's going to be a breeze. Josh, Ellen, from Jack and myself and the rest of the T3 team, thank you for your time today. We appreciate it very much, the openly, the discussion, the fact that you're willing to share so much. Keller Williams is one of the great examples of companies in our industry that have given back and still give back. We thank you for doing that. We look forward to that huge amount of free data and information you're going to be sharing with us. So thank you for all of that good stuff as well. And we will share with the rest of the industry. Hope you both have a wonderful weekend. And once again, thank you for your time. Take care, guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
All righty. Awesome. Bye-bye.
Bye.